Woo, baby, do you know what that's worth? Ooh, heaven is a place on earth. Well, I'm reacting to Professor Yang being a dick to a student who asked him a question. However, prefaced, I actually really like this guy. I've watched dozens of his videos. I just want to highlight how he's being unfair to this student who asked him a
You said
question.
that the previous people are like smarter than today's because they can navigate the Pacific like just with the boat and
Contextually, just to pause it, and hopefully the sound's going through. Yeah, his claim is okay. So earlier people were more intelligent than people today because they could just navigate on a boat, like across the ocean or on a coast or whatever it is. And today, we can't really do that. We need these navigation systems or whatever. So he's asking about that. You can watch the video. I'm not trying to misrepresent him.
and don't sleep. But nowadays we use computer, right? But I think that nowadays we use computer is not because that we cannot navigate the ocean just by a boat and human. Is because this matter is we could get more precise and accurate information.
Okay, that's not true. Okay, if I put you on a sealed computer, you would die.
It immediately becomes defensive. I know I'm going to keep pausing it, but it's like the way his hard had not. You would die. If I put you on a boat, you'd die. And it's like, let's be fair to the kid. The kid's talking about like society. He's talking about the human race in general. He's talking about expert, boat navigators. He's talking about expert sailors. He's not talking about. I think this is a class of 17-year-olds. I think he's teaching he's doing like a high school extra class or something. I'm not entirely sure the context of what this guy's teaching exactly, but I know he does like high school stuff. So for him to react this way to somebody who's possibly 17 years old, it's like a 17-year-old back in the day, it dropped off on a boat would die too, man. Like the kid's obviously talking about the technology has advanced, but it's not necessarily you don't necessarily need to rely on it, right? But that technology, I think the technology would make it a lot easier for the 17-year-old, frankly, to live as opposed to a kid back in the day.
It's that simple. Okay, the computer's not going to help you navigate the ocean. Okay, all right. All right, so
The computer's not going to help you navigate the ocean. You're like, there's
these are the
something later
pyramids,
on too. He asks
okay?
again. He's like,
And there's a great
me an example.
mystery
Give me an
as to how these pyramids.
this is why I just don't like this. It's like, I understand his point. Like, okay, so he's basically talking about IQ of people, how people haven't gotten smarter over the years, which I'd argue is kind of true at the same time. But if you look up the statistics of IQ, which IQ is kind of cringe, right? Like, that's the thing, talking about IQ is cringe. But if you look up the statistics of IQ, everything that I'm reading, it actually has gone up since like the 1940s or whatever. And then lately, I forget what the effect was called. It actually has been going down a bit in the last several years. But overall, since the early 1900s, apparently IQ has been going up. And it's just like, this kid is not going to want to listen to you if you're attacking him for asking a question. You could just explain the nuance of what you're saying, which I do agree largely with what Yang was saying of like, we have this like technology, we have this infrastructure, but it's not making us smarter. It's just like we've built stuff that we now rely on, which is true. But there's also a case for that where like you're progressing in a society and it's like, picture yourself being in the woods and you're getting rained on, you're getting snowed on, whatever, and then you build a shelter. Yes, that infrastructure makes it easier for you to survive. And you expended energy to build that infrastructure, if you can call that infrastructure like a shelter in the woods, right? Like it kind of represents infrastructure or like technology or whatever. And now it makes it easier for you to survive. And in a way, you could make the point that now you're more reliant on that as opposed to being the, Ubermensch, bow hunting deer from a bow that you created. But still, you had to make the bow, you had to make the tools, right? So it's a very reductive argument, in my opinion, to act like, well, if I threw you on a boat, you'd die. And it's very, complete. It's just sort of invalidating to this kid's argument completely. But overall, yeah, I like this guy's videos. Not really trying to criticize. Hopefully this is fair use. I know I see other creators doing stuff like this where they're playing a video and they pause it and interact with it. So it's not me literally just playing his video. It's literally playing a little soundbite of it. There's another part later on where I think the kid
can't we
asks the question again.
Okay. One of the time or monk odd. Don't. And this is hard for us to understand, but there's no sense of individual propriety they had.
You just put me on a.
Yep.
Oh, here
don't matter. Okay, does that make sense? All right. Any more questions? Yep.
So I do agree that we cannot build pyramids nowadays, and I'll definitely die if you just put me on a pathetic. But
see, he's even conceding to the point that he made unfairly to the kid. It's like, yeah, well, if you put me on a boat, I would die. And he seems to be very sincere about it. He's not really trying to like jab at him too much. Where it's like, okay, yeah, I'll concede your point that if you put me on a boat, I would die, which is like kind of fucking obvious, right? Like it's kind of obvious. Even people, again, I'm gonna reiterate my point of people back then navigating a boat. If you put a 17-year-old boat, he probably would die.
But like for modern people, we also can do like a lot of things that previous people cannot. So how does the building of a pyramid, these things demonstrate that the previous people are smart?
Can you tell me what we do today that is so wonderful and spectacular?
What?
Yeah, what do we do today that's so wonderful and spectacular? And
what would you do today that's so wonderful? I hope the sound's coming through.
you think it's amazing?
He's being kind of sarcastic, which I would argue is sort of fair.
Something that we do today that is spectacular and wonderful.
I do.
Okay, yeah. I mean, do you have an example?
Okay.
Okay, thank you, okay? Yeah. So give me an example.
Give me an example.
Any more
Just
questions?
challenging him. Give me an example. Well, I actually agree with Yang on this part more so than the first when he interacted with him. It's like an example we do build taller buildings, right? I mean, we could build the nowadays we throw up skyscrapers essentially. We got the World Trade Center, we got the Empire State Building in New York. You know, we do build more sturdy, tall structures. If you want to discredit that though, you can say like, well, what's that do other than feed into the capitalist pig system? Like you can do that, you know. But and then he names like what do we do today, like ChatGPT, and it's like I agree with his biased point, obviously. Like I think AI is gonna kind of ruin us, but what do we do today that's so great? Overall, I agree with that sentiment. To be honest, we're not really doing anything that great.
To build it, and the second person have the same vision, or it doesn't really matter. They just want to bring.
It irks me just because the kid was being super nice and just genuinely trying to learn, and then even here he is like gracefully conceding his first point that he made earlier, that his attacking the kid point of like, well, if I dropped you on a boat, you die. And the kid's like, well, yes, I'm aware that if you dropped me on a boat, I would die, but da-da-da-da. And like, it's you can still get the sense that he looks up to this guy and he's just asking him a question. This guy's just attacking him. But overall, again, this isn't meant to disparage Professor Yang or anything. And I just overall, I recommend his channel. I do. I recommend his channel. You think this is a video about how this guy sucks and you shouldn't watch him? No, I think he has a really good channel, a lot of good information. Some points I think are arguable that he makes. You know, he also made the point, which I think largely I understand the sentiment and I agree with it. He kind of made the point of like, you know, our culture now is more individualistic and selfish. And back in the day, you know, with like the whole money thing, and if somebody were to get a lot of money, and I forget what the context was exactly, what society or basically if they had great spoils or whatever in food or money, they would, you know, throw a feast for the community. And that's kind of your social currency. Wasn't so much actually money, hoarding of wealth, but your helpfulness, your like status in the community as somebody who like helps the community and like can throw a feast for everyone to share the bounty for the good of the community. I thought that was a really good point from another video. I can't remember at the top of my head. And largely, I think that's probably true. And another point was the self-actualization you get from, I think his simple example was, and this is not from the same video again, he made the point of you would make a pie. This is a very simple, I think almost like Marxist style, like anti-capitalist kind of point, where you make a pie, you share the pie, and then you feel self-actualized when you share the pie with somebody and they enjoy it and they say, oh, this is a really good pie, and it's not about money. And he said if they offer you money, then it's like almost like you're insulted, like you're selling a service to them when you wanted just like them to try the pie that you made that you're proud of, and that's self-actualizing to you or whatever. But then if somebody offers you, okay, I'll give you $5 for each pie you make, it becomes this and yeah, right, I might be butchering it a little bit. It becomes this system where you feel kind of completely disengaged from what you're doing and outside of it, and it's not actually satisfying or self-actualizing for you. And largely, I'd agree with that. I even brought that up actually to one of my friends, and they made the point of, which makes sense. They made the point, and I do agree with the point of. You like something, you want to support it, you give money for a product or whatever, and just the fact, the very simple example of like, yes, we can't all be bartering all the time. You know what I mean? Everything can't just be strictly out of love or trading. I trade a sheep for a bag of oranges. It's not that I don't think society could function or work that way, but it would be really slow, and like there's a certain sense like where there's the whole what do they say in the reggae songs, money is the root of all evil and stuff. I think the hoarding of wealth and the accumulation of wealth in that regard, to the point where you're a at this point, multi-millionaire barely means anything. But if you're a billionaire or a trillionaire or zillionaire or whatever, it's kind of the point. It's like you're just hoarding wealth at this point. Like, and money does represent value, right? So it's like the value of the pie. It doesn't really become about the self-actualization of the pie. You don't have the connection anymore, but it is the value of like the goods you used to make the pie, the flour, the whatever, and they're exchanging the value, and then the value also considering the effort to manipulate those ingredients and those goods or whatever. It's goods and services, right? So the value of goods and services, however you value your time, is how you'll price the pie, right? So money does represent value, and in a lot of ways, money represents time, and that's kind of the thing where some people, I mean, I'll say it time and time again, I don't know if I've ever touched on this, I think I have, there's two classes of people in this world, and I think a huge part of the problem with the working class, there's capital class and working class. That's really about it. That this American notion that there's this middle class. Yes, there's like upper working class. There are people who can quit their job for a while and be okay. They have enough savings in the bank. They have enough assets where they actually can be jobless for a year, 2 years, maybe 3, maybe even 5 years. They can take their time. They can go back to school. They have more options. But the point is, I think there's two classes of people. There's working class and capital class truly has their full day, whereas the working class, generally speaking, only has half their time. So in a lot of ways, and I mean that in the sense of there's a 24-hour day. Let's say the average person sleeps, so you need to be healthy, you need to sleep around 8 hours. I know some people sleep less than that. I'd argue it's try to sleep 8 hours, but you sleep 8 hours, so that gives you, 16 hours. Then the workday is 8 hours. So that is effectively half of your waking life. So there's the working class that works half their waking life. They have half their life to do what they actually want to do, their real hobbies and interests. And it's great if your work is your real hobby or interest. But my point is, money represents value, and money represents time. Money represents having, near infinite money, having generational wealth, having capital class wealth represents you having 2 times as much time. Like, it's almost like vampiric. You have 2 times as much time as the average person who needs to work. So, I know it's kind of getting the points are getting a little jumbled with the original thing that I was commenting on. But what's the problem? What's the problem? Well, the problem with the accumulation of wealth is not so much that people shouldn't be rewarded for working hard. They should. I think if somebody does more work, they should have more things. But the problem is when somebody, you have to think about if someone has a trillion. See, now there's going to be trillionaires soon. There's people with $400 billion with money and assets and stocks and property, and you know what I mean? There's people worth, $300-400 billion, and you think the average person is worth what? The average person's total assets is worth, let me look that up. Let me look that up real quick. Average person in America, total asset value. The average household in the U.S., this is the very first thing that comes up. I don't know if this is true. Average American household, total asset value, also called net worth, is $1 million as of 2022. So the average total assets, okay, a more representative figure for the typical American is the median net worth, which is only $200,000 in 2022, right? Even if you want to say average net worth, because this is factoring in the ultra rich, right? This is factoring the ultra rich. Even if you want to be fair to the ultra wealthy, capital class, and say the average net worth, which to me, that's a ridiculous number in my head. I don't know where you live, but that seems like a ridiculous number. $1 million. How much is a billion compared to a million again? You got 100 million. You got, what is this? How many? And then if you have 400. So you divide that. I put minion. 400 billion. I know it's very basic math, but I'm trying to talk. And 400 billion divided by 1 million is 400,000. So if you think about it, you can make the argument, yeah, they had such better ideas. They're such better investors. But if you think about it, that's kind of making the claim that the average person, and that's being fair to the capital class ultra wealthy, right? That $1 million net worth is a bit skewed in favor of being higher. This is saying they're worth more. They're valuable. Their value is 400,000 times more than the average person in the U.S. And there's just no way, because the way you accumulate wealth is ripping someone off. Essentially, it's basically overvaluing your labor, overvaluing the what's it? What's it? See, now I'm having a brain blip. Sorry, goods and services. It's overvaluing the goods, it's overvaluing the services, or it's ripping the customer off, or it's ripping your employees who are doing, the good, who are putting together the goods and services for a customer, right? So you're ripping someone off by having essentially the value worth of 400,000 times more than the average person. And I know this was a huge change from the start of the video, but I just don't. It seems like a really simple point to me that, yes, we can't live as simply as trading an orange for an apple, but that does really kind of highlight how skewed it is nowadays with all this investors and the stocks and. I'm the CEO ideas man, and I play with money, and I take a phone call, and now I got a $15 million bonus. Why? What work did you do to really earn that? You're more important. The institutional people, like Professor Yiang was talking about how college is a scam now because you're just basically paying the institution and everyone who works in it their paycheck to basically be dropped off into the world and have really no advantage at all anymore with your degree. And yeah, it is kind of like a Ponzi scam with the hierarchical nature of capitalism, where the higher in the pyramid you go, you get paid a lot more to do a lot less work. And I think a lot of people would attest to that. A lot of people would admit to that when they say like, yeah, like I do this job. It's a more respected, lucrative job, but I do less work than I used to do when I was like stocking shelves or like whatever. I'm doing less work. I'm providing honestly less, and that's what it's saying is I'm providing less value. That's what so you're doing less work. You're providing less value, really. But it's just that by being higher on this like capitalist hierarchy, yeah, you're being paid more for less and you're being held to lower standards, essentially. You might say, like, this whole all hinges on me or whatever, but being higher in any kind of hierarchy is always being held to lower standards. You are being propped up on people below you. And that's how I view people with $200-300 billion is like, you can't possibly earn that money in your lifetime by doing real work. You have to do some kind of con scheme game, you know. You have to rip someone off. And the more workers you have, the bigger your company, the more buildings around America or whatever around the world that you have, and you're huge, whatever. And you look up the I did this for something, I forget. I did this for a business. It was like COVID time, but let's just see like McDonald's net worth. Is that like a way to 217 billion McDonald's net worth. That's the net worth. That's total, right? So 215 to 217 billion dollars. This is a billion, like $200 billion company. But there's people saying the workers, it's a high school job. They shouldn't be paid shit. The $200 billion is made off the backs of the workers, you know, making the burgers. They're cooking the burgers. They're doing the job. The job of McDonald's, you go there. What's the product you get? You get a burger. You get fries or whatever, like a fried thing in a grease fryer. You get fries. You get a burger. You get an ice cream or whatever it is. The point is, it's kind of it's like delusional to act like I go to this business to get this service. And yes, this person doing the job of the business, providing the service that I wanted at this business, is giving me the thing, but they deserve to starve. While the CEOs and the whatever are taking their, $10 million bonuses and they have their 7th vacation homes and their yachts and whatever. And yeah, I mean, there's a problem with that model is because the people higher in that totem pole or whatever are not providing as much value, and they're sucking up the value of the labor of the people under them. And yeah, it's like it's a real Marxist ideology or whatever, right? Which pretty soon is going to be labeled as problematic, right? Or has it been already? XYZ, I don't want to say banned words on YouTube, but yeah, I don't know how I went on that rant in this video, but yeah, Professor Yang, check him out. Really great channel. I just thought he was kind of being a dick to that kid, and then just talking about money. It's a complex subject, obviously. I wish I could trade an orange for an apple. I really do, because as soon as you have money, as soon as you get people thinking it's a high score in a video game, as soon as well, now I have 100 million, now I have 200 billion, and now it's a high score. Now you're trying to game the system just to make the number higher. It becomes unreal. And it's all these, and I'm going to keep going for another few minutes. It becomes real in the sense, too, where it's like, am I an economist? No. But I'm not dumb enough not to realize that, okay, all right, kitty, okay. This whole video, the microphone has been off.